Well, so I felt it necessary to do a how we got here addendum and epilogue, and I'm not sure exactly how this is going to turn out because I've written down a bunch of notes and stuff, but a lot of the story epilogue here will not make sense if you do not watch the dues, quotas, and how we got here video. Please go watch that one first. If I remember to, I might not. I'll put a link in the description for it. There's also another video that I'm going to make reference to. I might remember to link it. I probably won't. I'm sorry. Not really. Anyway, so yeah, go watch that other video first if you have no idea what the heck I'm even talking about. That video ends roughly at the point where we're waiting for the other shoe to drop after the Chalice meeting. So this is like a month or two afterward, if memory serves. The dues accountability that we were fighting for at the Chalice meeting, you know, that's here to stay. Still is. It's not going anywhere. And there's more about that here in a moment. But Kim Wickstrom writes another caustic email, caustic and inflammatory email, and the rest of the summer is playing out. Also, there are 2 or 3 different diversions that I think I put into my notes that are in the places that they are for a reason, but they're not necessarily part of the main narrative of, well, narrative makes it sound like it's not true, but every single thing in there is. I will put up this card, diversion, if if I'm saying a skippable part to understanding the broader end of the story. So if you see this coming up and you want to skip that part, you can just wait in the scrubbing until I put it down. So anyway, also, I'm planning on dropping this video at around the time that I'll be at the election night party, and well after the polls have closed. You might be able to figure out why. Just saying. Anyway, I just noticed something in the background. Too late now. The story starts the day I posted that previous video, the ones about dues, quotas, and how we got here. That day, a person who I will not name directly apologized to me for the horrible things they said to me, said and did to me, basically at the direct order of Victor Miller. This person apparently had no idea of the history in the video and had recently begun to doubt Victor Miller's honor. For the record, I forgive and I forgave this person. This person had later that day, that very day, announced their intentions to never cooperate with that little cult again. This person is now known to be a good volunteer worker for the Republican Party. And I didn't write this part in my notes, but has definitely been instrumental in a lot of the Republican Party efforts in this state, especially concerning who we want people to vote for and what we want people to vote against. So that person is okay by me. I'm actually a fairly forgiving person. And while this part doesn't directly track with the rest of everything here, this does illustrate a lot of the style and character of the Victor Miller cult. At the Western Idaho Fair, every year, the county party traditionally does a booth in the expo building, mainly as a voter registration drive and a chance for the party to directly engage with voters. This is especially so if there is some big initiative on the ballot, like this year in 2024. Usually, by the time the end of May rolls around in any given year, The county party is supposed to have a much better idea on what it's doing for the fair booth. May 2023 rolled around, so that's the previous year. May 2023 rolled around and we didn't hear a thing about the fair booth. Victor Miller's cult in power is either dodging questions entirely, or making it sound like much more is happening in the background than actually is. As the months roll on, and in parallel to everything else going on, people are getting more and more concerned about fair booth preparations. It is not until the very end of July 2023 where we hear anything from leadership about, concerning the fair booth. Something just went down in my background. I'm like, I can't turn around. But anyway, people are getting more and more concerned about fair booth preparations. It is not until the very end of July 2023 where we hear anything from leadership about volunteering for the fair booth. I hope I don't need to explain why this would be concerning. Then a very peculiar thing happens. In the email that is sent out to everyone regarding signing up to volunteer for the fair booth, there is a link to a suspicious site called signupgenius.com. In the site, there's a bunch of slots and shifts available for people to volunteer for, along with names of people who possibly signed up. That name, that word I just used, possibly, that'll become very relevant here in a moment. Some of these slots have very obvious prank names. Like, it's really obvious. Somewhat at about this time, as this email is going down, I don't remember what I was doing that day, but somebody brings it to my attention, and I have a look for myself. And in the very minutes where this is happening, somebody else is also pointing out a lot of the bad names, things, and these are names like Hugh Janus or IP Freely, etc. I think if you've ever gone to school in the United States, you probably have a good idea. Those kinds of names. The news of this cannot be contained because of how it happened. And not that I had any motivation to suppress it in the first place, though. This has the side effect of severely demotivating a lot of our stalwart volunteers. The names, that is, and not this on top of the usual leadership style of Travis Clyde, who was apparently in charge of it, this whole thing just turns it into the fair booth into a crap show. It gets worse from there, though. It gets worse from there. At the meeting, Mr. Clyde proceeds to accuse unnamed members of the Central Committee of being the culprits for the prank names, threatens an ethics committee investigation, and starts crying about the names and numbers that are used to sign up for these fake names, the fake names for these slots. On top of all of this, he complains to the whole committee that he had to sort out all of this while on vacation in Cancun. Nothing comes of that story from there. Now, it was already about that time where Victor Miller started ghosting people and hiding from his responsibilities. I joked at the time that it's the beginning of another Becky Young situation. I had no idea how correct I would actually be. The September meeting of the Ada County Republican Central Committee comes, and some heavily factional items are up for vote. And this is the first real test of the new proxy ban. It becomes almost violently clear that I had been right the entire time about the proxy abuse the Victor cult had been engaging in. Conservatives, as opposed to the Victor cult, steamrolled that night. It was a pretty good night. in and around this time, I forget how people start noticing, since nobody reliable has any direct info on this still as of yet, but it somehow gets leaked to the Gem State Chronicle, as well as through others subsequently, that large sums of money are being exfiltrated from the account belonging to the Ada County Republican Central Committee. Apparently, Victor Miller and his cult are refunding years-old donations to the party, and doing so for dubious reasons. Victor Miller wasn't just about to take his punishment, as I was saying in the last video, being the childish narcissist that he is. Little did we know the lashing out had only begun. People are finding this stuff out right as everyone's going to the October meeting of the of the Ada County GOP. The exact time that all of this is happening, that everybody's heading to the meeting, the Victor Miller and the rest of his cult's leadership resign their officer positions in an email that goes out to everyone. For context, and I need to explain some stuff here. These people, until that day, were still in power as the county chairman, Victor Miller, first vice chair, second vice chair, third vice chair, treasurer, and state committee woman. That's 2 people plus everyone who can preside under normal circumstances. Not only did they take the money, but they tried to leave the Ada County GOP unable to function. I had always been suspecting that Victor Miller was receiving bad parliamentary advice, and it seems to be confirmed in this incident because of a part of Robert's Rules of Order that was specifically written for this kind of situation. He literally tried having everyone resign so that the committee couldn't do anything. That's literally what he tried to do. And what we literally were able to do was select a temporary chairman for the meeting. And for those playing along at home, that was one Mark Johnson, a really trustable man. From there, our previously introduced bylaw amendments were passed, and Victor couldn't even succeed in throwing a fit. Turns out we were able to get along just fine without him. The Victor Miller cult largely gets away with taking the money, though. Not very much time later, they formed themselves into the Idaho Majority Club. I've already said what I have to say about their curious name. It's a whole video, a lesson in language, if you want to see what I have to say about that. After the subsequent month where we elect a full, after the subsequent month, because, you know, there has to be a whole 30 days between an officer resigning like that, and in this case, it even included the chairman, and electing a new one. There has to be the gap. That's not only written into the bylaws, but the state rules, and I think part of the Idaho statute, too. So after that subsequent month where we elect a full conservative slate to replace all those seditious 6, as they would later come to be known, we are now in the situation where conservatives are finally in charge again, and haven't been since about April 2020. We are now heading in, at that point, we are now heading into the state winter meeting with a full conservative slate. Dues accountability is a permanent part of the rules. Ada County GOP is starting to fundraise in earnest, and we're paying our dues. And we're paying our dues largely because we're fundraising and proxies are no longer allowed. This would even be pointed out directly and called out by the state treasurer, Steve Bender, in the winter meeting in 2024. And that's how the party would start out the year, is basically that. Now, we are heading, I'll see, I already read that part. Fast forward a bunch of months, where we are still paying our dues to the state party. The 2024 primary season is upon us, and we just took care of the presidential caucus. That's a whole other sub-story that I don't know if I'll ever do a complete video on, but it is an interesting side story with what did and didn't happen. Anyway, fast forward a bunch of months, we're still paying our dues. The primary season is upon us. The Victor Miller cult is pushing a different slate for election in the reorg meeting coming up. They had Deborah Pitts for chair, Nancy Merrill for first vice chair, Alicia Purdy of a certain Facebook group, infamy, for second vice chair, and some other dumb and bad choices. Deborah, Nancy, and Alicia all make reference to dues to the state party, saying that they're not even going to pay them, and on top of some really brain-dead takes about Article 20 of the state rules. Long story about that. Might read it on a video at some point. I think I've already mentioned it a few times. Anyway, so that whole slate goes down in flames at the reorg meeting, following the pattern of their proposed chair, Deborah Pitts, losing the vote 73 to 106. Soon after this, I realized I cannot talk. Soon after this, I finalize and submit dues accountability reciprocity. The other half, because there's dues accountability and now dues accountability reciprocity, didn't actually write that name into the rule, but it's there. This was the other half of the eventual goal of what I did in the Chalice meeting. This pisses off the Victor cult and all of the other former establishment types, because they're not really the establishment anymore, but they are still very much a faction still, so we call them the former establishment. This is the other half of that what the reciprocity is the part of the effort that needs to go into the convention rules, which can only be changed at a convention. The reciprocity part is where we say the credentials committee can't undo any of the actions done according to dues accountability. It's right around this time that a rather ironic thing is happening. Here's another diversion. In other videos, I have talked more about the Gem State Conservatives, the Gem State heist, and what ended up happening and not happening. The Gem State heist, however, does at around this time take out genuine conservatives in Bonneville County. Remember, this is the same county that was at the center of a lot of bad stuff going on in 2022. So, in between the primary and the reorg meeting, and in an ironic move, the outgoing leadership in Bonneville County pipes a lot of their money into the state party, specifically for the purpose of holding the convention in Coeur d'Alene. People here in Ada County at the time were saying, well, if Victor Miller is justified in doing it, then so is Bonneville County. The diversion's over. So I had some information on what was going on, but I wasn't completely filled in with what was going on with Bingham County. Apparently, their beefing with Dorothy Moon over the past year had some effect on their coffers. Instead of paying their dues, they paid a lawyer to go after Dorothy Moon. And for really bad reasons, too. I find this ironic and somewhat funny for a particular reason. See, the perennial actors out in Bingham had always been the part of the chorus of voices always ready to denigrate Ada County for not paying their quotas in years past. As soon as we made a hard rule about it, with real consequences, it's Bingham of all counties that's the first to F around and find out. Especially with the whole thing that started the beef with Dorothy Moon. That was the illegal move that that's all folks, Dan Cravens started. He tried to select his own successor and preside over the election of him. That's what started this whole thing, and that's what got Bingham excluded, because they were doing all that beefing. Then eventually they do, they pay for a lawyer to go after people for bad reasons, and because of that, they can't pay to go to the pay their state dues and can't go to the convention. Bingham County never clears up its dues issues before the convention, and there are a lot of unrelated items at the convention because it was a convention, but the former establishment tries to shoot down the dues reciprocity rule. They failed. Hard. Like really hard. Hard failure. Trent Clark, of all people, that's a name I've been bringing up a lot. Trent Clark, of all people, even tries to lash out against it. This is after the dilatory incident that you can find on the channel. One has a version of Descubridor de Sechimaris on there. I love that song, and there's another version that's, I think, more funny but less music. Anyway, you can find what that was. In the end, the conservative ascendancy is here and is thriving. And that's all the relevant addenda to the previous video of quotes, dues, rules, and how we got here story. I have rather severe doubts I'll do a third video about this whole storyline, because depending on what happens tonight, and just in case people aren't really thoroughly aware yet, despite what I said in the beginning of the video, right now it is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. As I'm recording this, I'm not sure of what's going to happen tonight. But either way, the story kind of ends with whatever happens tonight. And I think some good things are going to happen, especially if we have such a person as Dorothy Moon at the helm. But that's all the relevant stuff. I think I'm just going to just upload and time this video for later during that party. And then if anybody wants to email me, involvedidahoan@icloud.com. You can even see that email address on a bunch of my other videos by now. I'm not a hard person to track down. So, if you want to contact me for anything, especially if it's asking political questions or, about the local stuff or what have you, drop me a line. I'm more than happy to, talk with people. Apparently this is the only thing I'm really good for these days. But anyway, y'all have a good day. Blessings.